In the mountains of South Asia there is a line. It has no official name recognized by both sides. It is not a proper border. No peace treaty ever created it. No agreement ever settled it. And yet, on one side of that line, there are nuclear weapons pointed east. On the other side, there are nuclear weapons pointed west. 2 countries, 1.5 billion people combined, both with the bomb, both with their finger hovering. This is Kashmir, and it has been on the edge of catastrophe for over 75 years, not because of hatred alone, but because of a single decision made by a man who had never set foot in the region, in an office in London, in the summer of 1947. This is the story of how a paradise became a powder keg. To understand why Kashmir matters so deeply to both sides, you first have to understand what Kashmir actually is. Nestled between the Western Himalayas and the Hindu Kush, the Kashmir Valley is one of the most breathtaking places on earth. Mughal emperors called it paradise on earth. The Dal Lake, the Jhelum River winding through Srinagar, meadows so green they look painted. For centuries, Kashmir was a crossroads of trade routes, of cultures, of faiths. Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, all lived here, layered on top of each other like geological sediment. The valley was majority Muslim. The surrounding hills held pockets of Hindu and Buddhist communities. It was never a simple place. It was always a layered one. By the mid-19th century, Kashmir was ruled by a Dogra Hindu dynasty, the Maharajas of Jammu and Kashmir, under indirect British oversight. The British didn't govern it directly. They governed it through the Maharaja, and that arrangement worked until the British decided to leave. When Britain announced in 1947 that it was withdrawing from India, it left behind not one country, but a puzzle of over 560 princely states, each technically sovereign, each ruled by a local king or nawab. Every single one of those rulers had to make a choice: join India, join Pakistan, or attempt independence. Most made that choice quietly, quickly under pressure. But one ruler hesitated, and his hesitation changed history. To understand Kashmir's crisis, you must first understand the catastrophe it was born from. In June 1947, Britain handed the task of dividing British India into 2 nations, India and Pakistan, to a single lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe. He had never been to India before. He arrived in June. He was given maps, census data, and a deadline. He had 6 weeks. 6 weeks to draw a border through Bengal in the east and Punjab in the west, regions of tens of millions of people, mixed religions, ancient communities, shared farmlands, rivers that didn't care about religion. When the Radcliffe Line was announced on August 17, 1947, 2 days after independence, the consequences were immediate and catastrophic. 14 million people were uprooted in the largest forced migration in human history. Up to 2 million were killed in the violence that followed, in massacres, in riots, in revenge killings on trains that crossed the new border. Punjab was split down the middle. Families were separated. Farmers found their fields in one country and their homes in another. Cities that had been shared for centuries were suddenly enemy territory. In the middle of this chaos, the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, Hari Singh, still hadn't decided. He was a Hindu ruler of a Muslim-majority state. He didn't want to join Pakistan, a Muslim nation in which he would lose power. But he was reluctant to join India too, fearing Hindu nationalism would eventually absorb his dynasty. His dream, quietly, was independence. He signed a standstill agreement with Pakistan, essentially a temporary arrangement to keep things running, while he stalled for time. Pakistan ran out of patience first. In October 1947, thousands of Pashtun tribal fighters, backed, armed and organized with the quiet approval of Pakistan's military, crossed into Kashmir from the northwest. They moved fast. Within days, they had captured Muzaffarabad and were advancing toward Srinagar, the capital. They were days away from taking the entire valley. Hari Singh panicked. He had no real army capable of stopping them. He had one option: ask India for military help. But India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, and his Governor-General Lord Mountbatten gave him a blunt response. "We will send troops, but first you must sign the Instrument of Accession. Kashmir must join India." On October 26, 1947, with tribal fighters less than 30 miles from Srinagar, Hari Singh signed. Indian forces were airlifted into Srinagar the very next morning. They pushed the tribal forces back, but not out of Kashmir entirely. Pakistan's regular army soon entered the conflict directly. A war had begun. By the time a United Nations ceasefire was agreed in January 1949, the fighting had stopped. But the question of Kashmir had not been answered. It had only been frozen. The ceasefire line left roughly 2/3 of Kashmir under Indian control. The remaining third, including Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, fell under Pakistani control. The UN resolution called for a plebiscite, a vote to let the Kashmiri people decide their own fate. That vote has never been held. 76 years later, it still hasn't. What followed was not peace. It was a slow, grinding, intermittent war fought in 3 bursts and a permanent simmer. In 1965, India and Pakistan fought their second full war, with Kashmir at its heart. Neither side won decisively. The Tashkent Agreement ended the fighting but settled nothing. In 1971, a third war was fought, this time over East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh. Kashmir was not the primary theatre, but the rivalry deepened. The bitterness calcified. Then came the nuclear dimension. India tested its first nuclear device in 1974. Pakistan followed in 1998. And suddenly, the frozen conflict over a mountain valley had become one of the most dangerous nuclear standoffs on the planet. 2 countries sharing a border, both with the bomb, with a dispute neither could afford to lose, politically, emotionally, or militarily. In 1999, Pakistani soldiers secretly occupied peaks in the Kargil district of Indian Kashmir. India discovered the infiltration and launched a major military offensive to reclaim the positions. The Kargil War lasted 2 months. Both sides came closer to nuclear exchange than the world knew at the time. American intelligence was alarmed. President Clinton personally intervened to pressure Pakistan to withdraw. The soldiers pulled back. The peaks were recaptured. But the line of control, barely moved. It never does. In the decades since, it is the Kashmiri people themselves who have paid the price of a dispute they did not create. An armed insurgency began in 1989, fueled by frustration, unemployment, and a sense of political betrayal. India deployed hundreds of thousands of troops. Human rights organizations documented disappearances, torture, and extrajudicial killings on both sides. Tens of thousands of Kashmiri Hindus, the Pandits, were driven from the valley in 1990, becoming refugees in their own country. The violence ebbed and flowed. Periods of relative calm were shattered by bombings, military crackdowns, and protests that filled the streets of Srinagar, with young men throwing stones at soldiers. In August 2019, India's government took a step that shocked even those who expected boldness. Prime Minister Narendra Modi revoked Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, the clause that had given Jammu and Kashmir special autonomous status for 7 decades. The region was stripped of statehood and split into 2 union territories, governed directly from New Delhi. The internet was cut. Political leaders were detained. The valley was locked down for months. Pakistan called it illegal. The United Nations called for dialogue. India called it an internal matter. The people of Kashmir, as they have been for 76 years, were largely not consulted. Kashmir today remains one of the most militarized zones on Earth. Over 500,000 Indian troops are deployed there. Pakistan-administered Kashmir is governed separately, with its own political structures but limited real autonomy. China controls a third portion, the Accede, claimed by India but occupied by Beijing since 1962, adding a third nuclear power to an already volatile equation. 3 nuclear states, 1 valley. The United Nations resolution, the one that promised Kashmiris a vote on their own future, has been ignored by both India and Pakistan for 3/4 of a century. What began as a British lawyer's deadline, a Maharaja's hesitation, and a ceasefire line drawn in haste has become one of the most intractable conflicts in modern history. Not because a solution is impossible, but because for both India and Pakistan, losing Kashmir, even politically, feels like losing a part of their own identity. India cannot give it up without unraveling its secular founding promise. Pakistan cannot abandon it without surrendering the very reason it was created. And so the mountains remain divided. The line remains unmarked on the ground but absolute in consequence. And the people who have lived there for centuries remain caught between two nations that love Kashmir too much to share it, and too much to ever truly let it go.